All right. So this is Rekieta Law. And I subscribe to them. I follow them. He's an interesting character. He's mostly conservative. I do like to subscribe to some conservative channels because, again, I like to know what the other side is saying. Although, when it comes to issues of law, I do find that sometimes, or many times, he gives a correct view of the law. And I think a lot of the times he will have a more libertarian take and not necessarily fall for the standard line that conservatives take. And as such, it's a much more palatable conservative channel to watch. But in reality, the only time I really watch the channel is like after I do this show. Like, I'll put it up in the background while I'm like putting together my videos and uploading them to YouTube so they'll go live the next day. So in this particular case, he is talking about Donald Trump's gag order, and he was complaining that he said some comment about the gag order doesn't allow Donald Trump to criticize the DOJ. Well, I mean, I don't pay for one of his memberships. I'm not a paid member. I am not going to pay for a super chat. I'm not that interested in giving this dude money. I mean, clearly, as you can see, he at least has one super chat, and that super chat I think that's at least a $50 one. I want to say, I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think the red ones are kind of high. I think behind my Venmo one, I think there's at least a $20 one as well. So, point is that I made a point to make a comment, not expecting him at all, especially considering the fact that, as you can see, he's been imbibing during the show, and he tends to like to drink during the show. And I think this is definitely towards the end of the show, because it's at about 1 hour and 10 minutes out of 1 hour and 26 minutes before he then goes over to Rumble, if that tells you anything. But here's the point where I think he gets to seeing what I have to say.
This is the most uninformed you've seen me be from Liberal Dan. Wonder why you think that.
Because this is the uninformed I've seen you be. And I was like, oh, he mentioned my name. Like, it was a little bit after I actually said the words, but I was like, he actually mentioned my name. Look at that. So,
here's the thing, Liberal Dan. If you don't understand that Donald Trump has every interest in investigating an election, getting advice from his lawyers about it, and talking about it while he's still president, and that every act he's accused of in this case specifically falls under that, and it should obviously be presidential immunity, something that has existed in concept, if not in concrete jurisprudence, since 1891. If you don't understand that, if you don't recognize that, then it's entirely because of your bias.
No, because presidential immunity only applies to issues that pertain to your job as president. His campaign has nothing to do with his job as president. His campaign is extra presidential. He has no authority as president in the job of running elections. Elections are a state-run thing. Elections are run at the state level. He has no authority over presidential elections. Now, he may be able to, via the Justice Department, be able to investigate election crimes at the federal level. That's fine, but that's the Justice Department's authority. He, as is the de facto head of the Justice Department, but we typically had a tradition, at least before Trump, where we weren't supposed to have a commander-in-chief that is, overseeing every single thing that the Justice Department is doing. We're supposed to have an independent Justice Department that goes out and investigates the crimes that are being done, which is why Joe Biden never fired the federal attorney who was looking into his own son. It is why Joe Biden and Merrick Garland didn't took a special prosecutor to look into this case. Jack Smith was hired to look into this case because they didn't want it to look as if they were doing anything where they wanted, as if he was doing anything where it was hinky, so to speak. So no, he has no business at a presidential level looking into this. It has nothing to do with his job as a candidate. Absolutely, he might have every sort of ability and desire to want to make sure that the election that he took part in was run fairly and responsibly, and that he wasn't ripped off or whatever, and he can take the advice of attorneys, no matter how poor of advice that his attorneys might give him. But because it's not part of his job as president, he can't claim presidential immunity for it. And the fact that you can't see that is evidence of your bias. Let's continue.
Is he allowed to?
Bill P says, "Hey Dan, read my post." He needs, which one? The one he says he needs a nipple on that glass. Trump's lawyer didn't have a DC law license. The court notified John Law to license up today. Hilarious. So which one was it? The law license or the nipple? Hey Gibson Media, what's going on? Remember, behave in chat. I'm not going to be able to watch you. Behave. And this is a reminder to everybody, when you say something about anything, a point that as anybody's making, address the point being made, not the person making it. The mods already know this too and have full authority to act. Let's continue.
To criticize the DOJ under the order? Not Jack Smith, though.
Well, yeah, he can criticize the DOJ under the order because you were incorrectly saying that he couldn't criticize the DOJ under order, and he can't criticize Jack Smith under order because he's not allowed to do things that are going to bias the jury. You're not allowed to bias the jury.
Here's the thing. Liberal Dan.
And by the way, I love the fact that he's mentioning my name multiple times, because like every time he's mentioning my name, I'm like, ooh, that's more possible people that might be, interested in coming to my channel. Not necessarily people that agree with me, but that might get more hits. Maybe it's the alcohol talking that's getting him to do that. I don't know. But hey, I'm not one to begrudge somebody who drinks. I've drunk. I did a drunk live stream on Twitch. I may have had a drink once or twice while doing the political podcast as well. You never know.
Here's what you don't understand.
What I don't understand. I understand a lot. Many lawyers have told me that I have a great understanding of the law for a layperson, but let's continue.
Any gag on Donald Trump in this situation is a tyranny. And here's the other thing that you may not be getting, because I don't know why people don't understand this.
Wait, any gag on, and this is at this point I basically said, I think I had asked him in the chat, well, what about anybody else getting a gag order? Because it shouldn't just be a gag on Donald Trump that should be a tyranny. If you believe that a gag on Donald Trump is a tyranny, but yet you don't believe that gags on anybody else are a tyranny, then you would be a hypocrite. And I think he does address that at some point, but it doesn't make him any more correct.
We're talking Trump. It's a very specific circumstance. It's the pinnacle of political speech. I went through a whole thing on it. But here's the reality.
And he can do political speech. The gag order does not prevent him from political speech. The gag order does not prevent him from speaking about the politicization overall of the Justice Department that he feels is happening, even though it hasn't, and even though he campaigned on politicizing the Justice Department back in 2016 when he kept on chanting "lock her up" when it came to Hillary, and how he was alleging that she mishandled classified documents, even though at the time it would have only been a misdemeanor. That's why he changed the laws, and then he mishandled classified documents after he changed the laws like a moron. He's allowed to attack his political opponents like Pence. Even though Pence can come in and be called as a witness, he's still allowed to make attacks against Pence because Pence is a political opponent. So it was a very narrow gag order. I mean, I understand Trump might not understand a lot about gagging because he may not have caused anybody to gag in certain ways, at least. But I mean, just seeing him might cause people to just, but you know what I'm saying. Let's continue.
If the circumstance was you and a traffic ticket, the gag order violates the very fucking core of the foundation of this country.
Well, I mean, a traffic ticket isn't a criminal thing. It is a moving violation, which more of a civil type of a penalty, unless you've gone way above, like 5-10 miles over the limit, at which point some criminal statutes might be triggered, but it's not necessarily criminal like for going like 5-10 miles over the limit. But and you normally, for traffic tickets, you don't get jury trials. You don't have the option for a jury trial on a traffic ticket, and normally you're not going to have the situation where you're going to be having where you're going to have it make a public spectacle about how you're being railroaded. Like Donald Trump was talking today about how he's being railroaded. I've been working on the railroad all the livelong day. I've been working on the railroad just to pass the time away.
Very core of it. It doesn't matter.
Somebody said, Liberal Dan knows all about gags. I love how they love to fantasize about the other side sexually when they have to make a point. Instead of, actually addressing points, they have to, fantasize, have their sexual fantasies about it.
The charge. It doesn't matter the person, and it doesn't matter the counsel.
See, at least he was consistent. It doesn't matter the person, it doesn't matter the counsel. Fine. So at least he's being consistent when he's being wrong. Fine.
Or the court. All that matters is our court system is transparent so everyone can watch. Our court system is open so
Well, the federal court system isn't necessarily transparent because not everybody gets to watch, because the federal court system doesn't allow cameras in it, so we can't watch, and that should change, but that's not necessarily relevant to this point.
One can attend, and our speech is free, so we are able to present our defense inside and outside of court so that justice can be brought when injustice prevails in a corrupt system. And if you don't think the founders who came from England understand the corrupt nature of a star chamber run by a king and a king's court, then you don't understand the history of this country, and you don't understand why our system exists in the way it does. And I have nothing else to say on the subject for you, because if you don't know that, then you will never understand what freedom means or why it matters. And for you, I apologize for the failure of whatever public or private or homeschool system you came out of, and whatever college buried those ideas into your malleable skull.
All right, so there you go. Here's the deal. I love freedom. I love liberty. I love the ideas that this nation were supposed to be founded on, despite the fact that the founders who created this country had other ideals that weren't necessarily as perfect and wonderful, and I wish they would have applied them as equally across the board as you claim the rights that people have in court should be as equally broad as well. Donald Trump is being treated with kid gloves. Anybody else in this country who was doing the same things that Donald Trump has done would have already been incarcerated in jail. They would have been sitting in jail. They would have been locked up. They would have had a much worse gag order placed on them. The only reason that Donald Trump had such a narrow gag order placed on him is because he decided to run for president so early, and because he's running for president, that is one of the main reasons he decided to announce that he ran for president so early, is because he knew that he could make the argument that any attempts to shut him up, especially with judicial gag orders, because he knew all these things were coming, he would be able to use that as an argument against this so-called corrupt system of justice that's going after him, even though he's getting treated much lighter and much easier than anybody else in the same predicament would have been treated. Period. And no, I don't believe the founding fathers would have wanted him to be able to make a mockery of the judicial system. I don't believe the founding fathers would believe that anybody who is charged of a crime should be able to bias the juries in such a way that they should be able to do what he is attempting to do in trying to make it so that it's impossible for him to get an impartial jury. We're supposed to have impartial juries for a reason. We're supposed to have unbiased juries for a reason. He's not supposed to be able to get out there and twist the rules. Yes, we're supposed to have like a press. We're supposed to have the ability to speak about things, after the fact. We're supposed to be able to have the freedom of speech to be able to. The freedom of speech is not unlimited either. We all know that. Supreme Court precedent knows that, and it's been upheld repeatedly that gag orders on people to prevent them from poisoning the well when it comes to their jury trials, and make it impossible for them to be able to get impartial juries so we can get a fair and balanced ruling on the case, are perfectly fine. He's getting off easy with his gag order. I'm surprised he hasn't been locked up already, but the reason he probably hasn't been locked up already is because the judges are probably afraid that if they do lock him up for anything short of a major violation, and they're just letting him get away with minor violations at this point, is because they're afraid of what's going to happen, that there are people that's going to cause violence to take place. And Trump knows that. And I'm sure Donald Trump's attorneys would rather him shut the hell up. They've probably advised him in private, shut the hell up. You are doing yourself a disservice by continuing to babble on like this, but he won't. It's impossible. He can't do it because he needs to continue to talk. He needs to continue to talk. He needs to continue to shout out and lash out and attack people because that's all he knows how to do. And the judge has a responsibility to make sure that this trial is well handled. And that means making sure that in this case, that the jury that's going to eventually be seated has the possibility of being impartial and won't be biased. And also make sure that the individuals that are working for the court and that are working for the prosecution directly can be free to do their jobs without harassment or fear of threats of harm or violence. Because that's part of their jobs. That's part of the requirements of the system of justice, is that the people who are doing the prosecution need to be able to do their jobs without fear of repercussions, without fear of people coming after them. And if Donald Trump continuously spread things about them that are false, like he talked about the clerk in New York and of supposedly how she was the girlfriend of Chuck Schumer, which was a lie, and that was gagged, that was forced to be taken down off of Truth Social. If he's allowed to continuously lie and spread falsehoods about those people and incite his followers to do things like acts of violence against the individuals who are trying to prosecute him, that is not allowing for a fair and impartial trial. The prosecution needs to be allowed to do their job. And if Donald Trump is trying to circumvent that by what he's saying, then Donald Trump needs to be prevented from saying those things. And again, he has been treated with kid gloves. Anybody else in this situation would have had a much harsher gag order, would have been much more restricted, and or may have already been put in jail. But he's getting special treatment because he's a former president, because he's rich, and because he's running for president again. So no, I understand what this country was founded on. I understand the ideals that which you spoke of. I understand all of that. What you don't understand is the importance of a trial being held and it having the requirements of the prosecution to be able to do their job, the requirements of the courts to be able to do their job, and the importance of preventing anybody from who's participating in that trial to not circumvent those abilities. Because you can't do that. That's not protected speech. To say and do things that's going to cause your trial to have to get thrown out or to cause people to be afraid to just do their jobs because all they're doing is doing their jobs. And again, back to the whole presidential immunity thing, again, that's a BS argument. It's not part of his job. He does not have the ability to claim immunity on things having to do with him getting elected, because him getting elected is not part of his job as president. Him getting elected is part of his job, part of his thing as a private citizen. Has nothing to do with his job as in the office of president. He gets presidential immunity when discussing things with foreign leaders. He gets presidential immunity if he's debating things in private with members of Congress. He gets presidential immunity when discussing any matters of state. If he's talking to a governor. If he's having a meeting with his vice president. He doesn't get presidential immunity when discussing political items pertaining to his election. And if you think he does, maybe you should go back to your law school and get a refund, because clearly they failed you.